Hello. Welcome to Kindly Neurodivergent with Kay. This show is to spend quality time with each other, kindly discussing the similarities and wide range of differences we experience. The experiences we discuss on this show are for educational purposes only. Please do not substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Before we begin, I respectfully request that if you witness any pauses during this show, please continue watching. I'm composing a spontaneous comment or question, someone processing their thoughts, in addition to repeating something that was unintelligible or misunderstood. It is natural discourse, and we can choose not to say anything while this is occurring. Today I have Karin Ramos with me. She is here to discuss adapting to time zones, sensory needs, and more while traveling. Her son and I do therapeutic horseback riding at the same barn. Karin Ramos, Executive Director of Friends of NYC Nurse Family Partnership, assists first-time, low-income moms with scholarships, programming, and resources to achieve self-sufficiency and help their families thrive. Karin holds graduate and undergraduate degrees from Hofstra University in Communication and Public Relations. Her experience includes fundraising, capacity building, and strategic planning. She resides in Woodbury, Connecticut, with her husband, Bill, and son, Liam. Liam was diagnosed with autism at 1.5 years old. Karin has worked in nonprofits for 20 years, primarily in fundraising. She served families and young people in and around NYC for most of her career. For nearly 15 years, she volunteered with the Hoboken Shelter, raising hundreds of thousands in events as a 5K race director. In her free time, Karin enjoys hiking, traveling, and watching Sesame Street with her family. Welcome, Karin.
Thank you, Kayla. That was an awesome introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
I think you covered a lot of it. I am a 20-year fundraising vet working in non-for-profits. I like bridging the gap between what corporate does and what social needs are and filling those services. I have a fulfilling career. Liam, as you said, was diagnosed at 1.5. He has ASD. He is now 5 years old. He is in preschool in the pre-K integrated special education program. And he loves swimming. He loves horseback riding. And he likes being outside.
Can you walk us through your experience using TSA Cares?
I
How
can.
did it help reduce stress during airport travel for Liam?
Yes. TSA is a critical resource for families that have a loved one with a disability to travel. I'd highlight from our experiences as someone with those with a hidden disability. We've encountered pushback, aggression, and often rebuttal when we asked for accommodations without the help of TSA Cares. TSA Cares agents are specially trained. They know a lot about accommodations and they know a lot about hidden disabilities. And most importantly, they have the respect of their colleagues and assistance of their peers. I can fully understand the frustration that comes with working in a busy setting, as an airline is, and how those who don't need assistance are often impatient and maybe seeking special accommodations. TSA Cares helps identify those that truly need the assistance, gets them the help they need. We were able to get through security quickly with limited disruptions for Liam and without holding up fellow travelers.
What do you need for Liam?
What do we need for Liam? Mostly speed. I would say. He does well until he doesn't do well. Um, so you kind of are dealing with someone that could be handling the stress of travel fine, and then all of a sudden he's not handling the stress of travel
Mm.
fine. And he's in a meltdown. There's a lot of sensory overload in an airport. There's loud sounds. There's a lot of people. Um, People are often waiting, so it makes even the most patient of people get anxiety. People are worried about missing flights, so it can cause a lot of undue stress. We did not use TSA cares one of the first times we traveled. And right as we were about to step through security, he had a meltdown and got very scared. And fortunately, he was small, so my husband was able to hold him. Um, but it caused a big scene, caused delays. Um, it was a lot to deal with. So I think he needs that expedited service so that he doesn't have to wait in lines or deal with the stress surrounding people, the stress of having to take off shoes and put shoes back on. Shoes are a big sensory issue for him. So I think that, one of the last times we went through, they had him walk through the dogs, so he didn't have to undress, didn't have to take off his jacket, didn't have to undo shoes. So speed, probably most succinct. Sorry for the long answer, Kayla, but speed.
Awesome. Have you encountered any challenges with TSA cares that you weren't expecting, and how did you handle them?
Getting a hold of the right person, I think, was the biggest challenge that we weren't expecting. The TSA cares in airports, we normally travel out of Newark, JFK, and in the New York area. So those are pretty busy, some of the busiest airports in the
Mm.
United States. Yeah. It can take a while to figure out who's the right person you're supposed to be speaking with and who knows what TSA cares is. For example, we went to one airport and we were told to identify ourselves and give our case number. Because when you call, you get a case number. And we hand it to the individual at the gate. And when we did, they said, "We don't know what you're talking about, and we don't have this at our airport."
No.
Yeah, so fortunately, I'm very persistent and have learned through fundraising not to take the first no. So I kept going until I got a hold of a supervisor. Um, we found the right person, and the TSA agents at that airport were incredibly kind once we figured out who the right person was. Um, I think some airports are still trying to figure out the systems, but persistence helps.
Is it law to have TSA?
I don't know. That's a good question. I know that it's a program that's throughout the United States. So if you're traveling domestically, you can call TSA and they will have it available in any of the US airports that you're traveling in. One caveat being, and they do tell you this when you call, is that they may not have, depending on how many people that they have working that day, and how many flights there are, they may not be able to accommodate your needs.
Mm.
Yeah. But I will say, we flew out of JFK a month ago. The TSA agents were handling 40 cases that morning, between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., and they were getting everybody through and working very hard.
Tricky situation about staff.
It is understandable, given staffing, I think any place these days, but I mean, for the most part, we've never had an issue, and most of the TSA agents are well knowledgeable of hidden disabilities.
Are there any tips you'd give for parents or caregivers when traveling with hidden disabilities through airports, especially when navigating security or waiting areas?
Um, my biggest, I think too, my biggest tip is TSA Cares. We were just talking to friends of ours that had traveled with their son who also has a hidden disability, and they didn't use TSA Cares, and our experiences were night and day. My other tip would be to arrive early with plenty of time to find someone. My other tip that I learned is don't put your phone on do not disturb, or if it is on do not disturb. We did an early flight, and normally my phone is on do not disturb until about 6 a.m. Um, and I had had it on do not disturb, so I did not see the text message from the TSA Cares agent because her text message was not in my approved callers list. So going forward, if we have an early morning flight, I'm gonna have to remember to take off do not disturb so I can make sure that I receive calls because it turned out the airline had been calling and had been texting, but because my phone was on do not disturb automatically and I didn't remember that I had it on that,
Mm.
um, they didn't get through. But once, because we got there early, we were able to look at the phone and kind of assess what was going on and find the right person. And we all kind of had a little laugh over the fact that technology, despite its good intentions, had made for a challenge. So that I think was definitely trying to be at airports early, give yourself a little extra time. Um, I would also say make sure your iPads are all charged. We keep all of our iPads, like we have five of them that we usually travel with. Um, yeah, that's like the first thing we also tell the TS agents is like we have five iPads that need to go through security, so that they'll have all of the bins ready. Backup favorite programs and iPads. We learned you can actually download the YouTube videos, and save them. Yeah. So we do that. My husband also, my son he likes to have two iPads at any given time. One has to have a particular image on the screen. He watches one and then he has a image that he likes on the other. And my husband actually thought to screenshot the image that he liked before we took off so that if we lost Wi-Fi on the plane, that he would still have that image, and that actually did work. We lost Wi-Fi, the image went away, and my husband kind of quickly was like, "Oh, let me see for a second." And he brought up the screenshot, and it was worked out. And then also bringing lots of snacks, juice, maybe if you have your kid on like a make an exception, like a one-time rule, like you can have cookies in the morning if we get through security. We kind of have like a um, no rules in the morning when you're traveling because traveling is tough on everyone. So I think those are kind of my big tips.
We don't need to use TSA. Every time I get patted down in addition to get my hands and wheelchair wiped even though I could stand. You mentioned certain airports being great to travel through. What aspects of those airports made them more accommodating for Liam?
Sure. Surprisingly, actually, a lot of the airports have great TSA care programs. We had a great experience at JFK. The other things have made them great is some of the airports have playgrounds, which for a kid like Liam that's very high energy and likes to be outside and waiting is an issue in time and speed. When we went to Newark, they had an awesome playground and a lot of restaurants. And some of the airports have had sensory rooms. Um, the only issue I found with some of the sensory rooms is many of them are before security. Um, and most of the time when you go through the airport, the thing you try and do is check your bag and then get to security because there's always lines at security. So I think as people learn more, it would be great if they could make some of the sensory rooms after security. We're in
Mm-mm.
Ireland. Yeah, we were in Ireland and they had a sensory room, but it was before security, so we barely got to use it.
Does he do okay giving up his 5 iPads for security?
Um, he does because we try and make sure that we do almost one at a time and we let hang on to the last one until the very last minute and then loop him through. I mean, like the TSA cares, I think they understand kind of what that means to him and the comfort that it brings. So we really try to like kind of time it so that we've sent through the 5, we let him keep one, and then we can kind of I think there's so much stuff going on that he kind of gets a little distracted.
What have you found to be the best strategies for managing transitions through busy airports, like crowds or gate changes, when there may be sensory overload for Liam?
Good question. We still use a stroller. He's 5, but he still fits in a running stroller. And he really enjoys going running with my husband, so the stroller kind of serves a dual purpose. Um, we also often will use headphones. He doesn't love headphones because he doesn't really like hats or anything on his head, but he's learned that the headphones connect to the iPad, so therefore he finds them useful. Fortunately, he's not overly bothered by loud sounds, noise, those kinds of things. He almost can tune them out and focus on what he wants to be focusing on. I think the most important thing is the avoiding waiting in lines. Um, we often will find gates or terminals that aren't being used, that are more empty, and he can run around in those. He seems to find those just as good as a playground. Having 2 or more people can help. We often travel with my parents, which I know is a real privilege, and we're grateful for their assistance. That way, someone can track gate changes and someone else can monitor and play with Liam.
What about getting the stroller patted down? Does he mind?
No, because he doesn't need it. I think it just makes things easier for us to kind of herd him and not lose him. Since Liam's very fast. If you've ever seen him at horses, he does tend to run, and bolt. So most of the time, the stroller is to keep him contained for us so that we don't lose him in the airport. But he doesn't mind getting out of it.
How do you go about picking destinations that will suit Liam's needs while still offering fun and relaxation for the whole family?
Another good question. Fortunately, Liam likes many of the same things that we do. He loves the beach and the same things. He likes waters. He likes over the pool. Traveling cities can be crowded, because Liam does well in and adapts to more crowded environments. Cities offer a lot of good ways for us to have things for my parents to do. Like I mentioned, they travel with us, and then also Liam. Liam was born actually in the city. He lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is right across the river from New York City. And he lived there until he was 3. So he's very familiar with city streets and playgrounds. And I think that cities have a lot of those things. When we went to London, there was a million playgrounds for him to choose from.
Do you always use stroller once there?
Um, we've not. We sometimes like when we were going out to dinner, if we're going someplace that we feel like he could easily run away and escape, then we'll bring the stroller. Um, but I mean, he doesn't necessarily always need it to get around the hotel and that kind of stuff. So I think we use it more to make sure he doesn't elope versus tr getting him around.
Do you have a monkey backpack?
Liam is actually in the 90th percentile for height. So Liam is incredibly tall and lean. So a monkey backpack, he'd probably be almost as tall as I am. He's also about 50 pounds. So Liam's you can ask Alice at Little Britches. Liam may have originally ridden on the horse like he was a limp noodle, but he's got a lean and mean figure, which is why the stroller really is more like eloping because he's actually almost as fast as I am. He's got incredible muscle tone and he's quite if he puts his mind to it he could escape and he's very good at navigating a crowd. Like we noticed from the time he was probably 2 that he had the ability to kind of juke back and forth and get through people.
Hmm.
Um, so he's an impressive runner when he wants to be. So I think the stroller is really more about a safety issue for us because if he were to run away in a place like JFK,
Yeah.
he'd be gone. And
Mm.
because he doesn't respond to his name and cognitively know about safety concerns, we're really much more just concerned about making sure that we don't lose him because when you're traveling, you have bags and you have backpacks and you have 5 iPads and you have him. So you just want to make sure that like our normal travel thing is my husband takes all the suitcases. We have Liam in the stroller. We have the backpacks underneath him in the running stroller. Um, and then I have one backpack on my back, and then I have my hands free to push the stroller. And that if he gets out of the stroller, that I can kind of quickly grab him and hold his hand so that we don't lose any luggage or lose any people.
No.
How do you incorporate Liam's special interests into your travel plans? And has that helped make the experience more enjoyable for him?
It has for sure made experiences more enjoyable for him. Liam loves, as I said, the water and being outside. So those meeting those needs is especially important. We just went on a family vacation to Grand Cayman, and everyone had a blast. Liam spent 3 to 4 hours in the pool in the morning and 1 to 2 hours at the beach in the afternoon. When we plan trips, I try and think about what we can do to have him keep moving, and do things that he enjoys.
What about water safety?
Um, Of course, Liam is actually he's been a pretty good swimmer and he's been exposed to the water since he was probably since he was born. I've been around pools my whole life. I was a lifeguard. I have CPR training. I actually used to teach swim lessons um, many, many moons ago, but you still remember a lot of the basics. So Liam's been learning the basics of water safety since he was born, and he's been learning to kick. He is in aqua speech and aqua therapy. Um, just personally, I'm a huge advocate of teaching kids to swim. And while I believe in accommodations, I've never and we've never had him in any sort of floaties or any sort of like the water baskets. They give kids, I think, a false sense of security. So Liam has been learning to use his upper body muscles since he was 1.5. So, and we're all usually always in with him. I am not sit by the side of the pool kind of mom.
I understand I need swimmies just for extra.
Exactly, exactly. I think whatever accommodations people need are good. We've tried to encourage Liam because he does have really strong, like I said, he's a long, lean kid, and he's got and then this isn't my, we've heard from PTs and OTs that he's got really strong upper body muscles.
Mm.
We've tried to make him use those and make sure that he can swim. We don't let him use anything in the lake. We belong to a lake club, and we've tried to make him really kind of learn how to swim and learn how to tread water. And also, I would say his OT, he does aqua OT, and they've taught him things like when he falls into the pool to go back to the side and how to do like a monkey crawl. So I think he's been kind of learning that kind of stuff. And again, everybody figures out how to manage their kids in the pool differently.
Yeah.
Our style is to be in the water. I mean, my husband and I are both very active, which is maybe why Liam is so active. My husband's, as you heard, we have a running stroller, so he's a runner, he's a triathlete, and incredibly active. I, before
Mm.
Liam, used to do triathlons and running and was a fitness instructor. So our particular style is just to be, and he's our only kid, so we're his entertainment. So we
Yeah.
jump in the pool with him and we're in there all the time. So he's pretty rarely not in the pool. And we have tried, I think one of the things about not using the swimmies and improving his understanding of things is that when he does go into deeper water, he knows he's going to sink. So he's got to either get to the side or start kicking his legs.
Yeah.
Or make sure that he notifies us by tapping or something else that that's what he wants to do so that we come with him and can make sure that, if he does get into a pinch, that we can help him out.
Mm.
You mentioned the challenges of adjusting to time differences. How have you adapted or learned to manage that aspect better on your trips?
Um, I'll be honest, I don't know that we have. We had a really hard time in Ireland. Fortunately, when we went to Grand Cayman, there was no time difference. Um, we're heading to California next month. Our plan is to hopefully be able to get him outside a lot. Fortunately, the weather in California is a lot sunnier than in Ireland. So our goal is to research as many playgrounds, hikes, pools, and activities to kind of get him back on the time zone and be able to figure out that and help him figure out when he needs to go to sleep and when he needs to wake up.
Can you share more about the time differences between your destinations and how they've impacted Liam's sleeper routines?
Sure. Well, my husband used to travel a lot for work, and one of the things he always said was that time differences are tough for everyone. Traveling, when you're traveling east and going towards Europe, it's especially exhausting because you lose time. At least if you're going out to California, you gain some time and you can kind of make that up. So traveling east is always hard. If you can't sleep on the plane, you land, you're exhausted. Everyone tells you you need to power through and kind of get back on. But that's just hard. It's happened to me. I've traveled to Europe and I've taken the whole first day to fall asleep. And then the first international flight Liam took, he stood the whole time like a soldier.
Mhm.
It was him and I in a seat, and he stood next to me. When the seatbelt sign wasn't on, whenever we did try and get him to sit when the seatbelt sign was on, and we actually at that point we had taken the car seat with us, so we had him just know that he had to sit in the car seat. But when he could stand, he would stand the whole time. So he never slept. We thought he was going to sleep. Um, he made me tired when we landed. He was disoriented. He was tired. He was upset. So his dad took him. We had taken the stroller. His dad walked him in circles until he fell asleep in the stroller.
Mm.
And then we only let him sleep a little bit, and then we kind of got back on track and let him sleep at night. In Ireland, we just never seem to find a rhythm. It can be hard to fall asleep in a place you don't know. And we were traveling a little bit more to different countries when we were there, or different counties when we were there. We try to keep him busy during the day so he can relax at night.
Short or longer vacations work better.
Shorter or longer vacations work better. I think we try and always we personally, my husband and I have like a 3-day rule. Like where we always try and have at least 3 days in the destination that we're at. And that was even before kids. Just because it really lets you have like 3 full days to like enjoy your travel.
Mm.
My husband always feels like anything less than that is just not worth the effort of running through the airport. Because then you really get to kind of decompress, enjoy the destination you're at, and then before you have to worry about like getting back and running on a plane. So, I think it also depends on how long the flight is. You know, Grand Cayman is only a 3-hour flight, so we were really able to like we left at 8 a.m. and Liam was in the pool and enjoying a poolside hot dog by 2 p.m. That
Really?
afternoon. Yeah. And swimming. So I mean it hit all the right notes. So I think a trip like that you could do. I think for something like, you know, like that's why we saved actually our California trip for when he had a longer break. He's got a week off from school, so we're going for around 8 days. So hopefully he can get adjusted. Whenever we've done Europe, we've tried to do at least 7 to 9 days so that we have time for ourselves to get it because you kind of discount the first day or two. And then you really would want some days to travel.
I like a week or two.
Mm.
I would love a week or two. It's really, you know, he's I think at 2 weeks, it's tough to do with his schedule. Because he's got school, and then he does the extended school year. But we've done a week and that's been good. But I will say, like when we did the Grand Cayman, because it was so close, like we did I think 5 days in total. We left on a Thursday and came back on a Monday. Um, and it was great. I think everybody probably could have stayed an extra day or two, but it was more than enough. It was refreshing. It was great. Um, and you know, a nice quick flight is good for everybody.
What has your experience been with Airbnbs or vacation rentals? What
Uh,
accommodations do you think make a stay easier and more comfortable for Liam?
yeah, vacation rentals making it more comfortable. I think it can go, it's interesting. It can go either way because we've been to Grand Cayman twice now, and one of the times we did an Airbnb, and one of the times we did a hotel. I would say like when we went and we stayed in the Airbnb, we had multiple travelers. We'd taken my parents with us. We had taken um Liam's pop, who's my husband's father. So we had 6 adults. I think it was really nice to have the Airbnb to like let everybody spread out and to have your own room and to have be able to have coffee in the morning. There was a couple of times because we were taking so many adults and elderly adults and children and like bringing everybody out to dinner that it was just easier to like cook in the house. And Liam kind of had the whole house to like play with everybody and do things and like so I think that could definitely be that. And I know you'd asked me another question about like what we would do differently in Ireland, and I think an Airbnb might have been good there because the weather's so unpredictable. We'll say that it would have been nice to have like an Airbnb to let him run around or have more room or like just accommodate more. One thing that was nice about the hotel is my husband and I never had to do dishes, so we never had to clean up after ourselves. We never had to worry about making any beds. Like there are certain things about a hotel that just make a stay a little bit easier. Um, you know, I mean, the hotels we stayed at have been really hospitable and like, you know, they can make recommendations as to where to go to dinner. I think about we stayed at a great hotel in France. And the doorman was super helpful getting Liam's stroller out the door every morning. Liam was littler and they made great recommendations for restaurants because we didn't know the area at all. So I think there's like probably, you know, pros and cons to both staying in an Airbnb. I think it depends on what you need, how many travelers you have. And also like one thing I thought about was how much time you're going to be spending inside. Because that I think was one big thing with Ireland was we ended up spending a lot more time in the room, and it was like it was a room, like a box. So you just felt very like cramped. And it would have been nice to have more space.
Less transitions and safety concerns.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the key things. And just like we could have brought more or bought more toys. Like sometimes we've picked up things and then known we were going to leave them behind. Like, if you're in an area, we're going to be inside more, so you could kind of get him to do things, coloring projects, that kind of stuff. For example, I mean, like when we stayed in the hotel in Grand Cayman, um, it was basically used for us to sleep, and for Liam to come back and maybe take a bath after he in between his pool and beach and kind of calm down a little bit. But he was never in there because he was outside all the time. So we didn't need the more space for him to kind of. I think Airbnbs are great when you either have a good sized group or when you're going to be decompressing in the room a lot because it gives you the space and he's loud, he vocalizes even though he's non-speaking, like he does vocalize a lot, so you don't have to be like kind of constantly concerned that he's yelling and somebody's hearing him through a wall and that kind of stuff.
You mentioned the challenges of booking autism certified hotels. Do you think it's worth the extra effort, or would you recommend other types of accommodations like family-friendly resorts instead?
Um, we had challenges booking them. It was booked out about a year ahead of time.
No.
Yeah, and we're not, I would say neither my husband and I are great planners ahead of time. You know, it's sometimes a struggle to know, we had kind of gotten used to planning things on the fly before Liam, and then even now, sometimes it's difficult to say what my husband's work schedule will look like for it to accommodate him to be out of the office. So I can't see if it's worth the effort. Um, we used to plan quickly. Like I said, I think one thing that I've read is that parents do get a chance to relax when they're at those hotels because they have autism certified nannies and babysitters and those kinds of things, that we've never been able to use or felt comfortable using babysitters at a hotel. So that could be worth the effort, just to kind of, I think that there's something to be said for parents, especially of active children, to be able to take a break. But we've found um, that the family-friendly resorts have been really great. We had one instance on the trip we were just on where um, we were eating breakfast and we were eating breakfast outside every morning, and we kind of always were seated in an area where there was fewer packed tables, and he would kind of wander around. And one morning there was one of the hotel staff eating breakfast, and it turned out she was fairly senior and she was evaluating things. And Liam kept going over her table to see what she was eating.
Mhm.
And she was fabulous. Like she just thought it was the most funny thing. She would say hi to him. She would kind of ask him what he was watching on his videos. So I think that the family-friendly resorts really do try to accommodate some of those things. So those have been worth the time for us.
Especially hard with appointments scheduled.
Yeah, exactly.
On your trip to London, Liam became a regular at a smoothie shop. How do you find places that cater to his special interests while traveling?
Sure. Even though I just said that I don't necessarily plan things, when we do book a location, I do tend to like dive into what's there and being able to look into the location. So at that time he was really into smoothies. I made them for him every day.
Mm.
At that point in time, we were also living in part-time in Hoboken, New Jersey, and part-time in Woodbury. And in one of the things it's about Hoboken is there's everything. It's like the city. So you just get like all kinds of things. So there was two or three different smoothie shops that he used to go in and get smoothies. So I thought that would be a really interesting thing for us. And that's one thing about staying in cities is you have access to a multitude of different cuisines and foods and things. So it turned out there was a smoothie shop about um, a couple of blocks from us, and it led right into a park. Um, so while we're spontaneous, I do think I try to plan things out. And London is a city that had everything. It was easy to find some things that he loved.
Does he have a limited diet?
No, Liam actually does great eating. It's um it's one thing that I think has always been noted by therapists and doctors is that he eats a lot of different foods. He has some favorites, but I mean, actually the trip to London and Paris was very interesting because he started eating steak on that trip. We had taken
Mhm.
Yeah, Liam loves his foods. You know, I think there's very few things that he doesn't eat.
Mhm.
Same as yeah. So he's got a good palate. And you know, I think that it makes it a little bit easier to take him like out to dinners and those kinds of things. You know, we kind of figure out we do look at the menus in advance and try and plot out what we think he would eat. But he likes steak, he likes salmon, he eats chicken. You know, I still do bring like a ton of safe foods because I think that like anybody else, when he kind of goes into when things get stressful or tough, it's nice to eat the things that you know. Um, so like I've always packed, he really loves macro bars. So I've always packed like a handful of kids' macro bars and a handful of um he really also likes these granola bites. So I've always tried to pack like a ton of safe foods and keep them in his backpack so that he knows he can go get those if he's hungry.
Does it gets tricky?
Yeah, it gets tricky. To make sure. I think making sure that we have the things that he likes available is important. But then we can also try and introduce him to new things while we're there.
How do you balance the need for structure with the desire for spontaneous activities when traveling with Liam?
But that was a good question. I think while Liam and many kiddos need structure, sometimes it can be nice to break with that structure. And that's what vacations are for. Um, I just had a talk with the school, and I think while structure does benefit Liam throughout his life, and I know he's only 5, but he has had, you know, like I mentioned, we used to live back and forth between Hoboken and Woodbury, and we would actually travel back and forth with Liam. Um, so he's very adaptable. He's learned to work with and without structure, and he can do that. So he reminds me to let go more often than not. On our trip to Grand Cayman, I can often be too rigid. Like we need to get up, we have to work out, we have to have shower, we have to have coffee, we have to do this. Uh, Whereas Liam likes to ease into a day. He wants to get up, he likes to sit on the patio, he gets moving a little more slowly. I think learning to read his cues as to when he's overtired or needs a break um, is really important. Like we kind of would notice in the Caymans, like when he was getting a little stressed out, and then we would go inside and take a break. So we really tried to build a routine, but I think oftentimes that there's such a rigid schedule for Liam and for probably many children that have outside therapies and outside things. You're going to school, you got to do therapy.
Yeah.
It's incredibly, I mean, I think about the hours, the and some of the things that are recommended, and it just seems like when does he have time to relax? And I think that
Uh-huh.
that's one of the things that we've tried to do is like, I've noticed that I think he occasionally needs, as much as he loves his therapies and that they're often play-based, it's still a lot of time for his brain to have to be on and interacting with another human. And I think we all just need moments to let go and be zen. And I think Liam needs those as much as anyone. And giving him places where he can relax and choose to do or engage when he wants to is really important.
Does he understands and like the idea of vacation or prefer home?
I think it depends on where we go. I don't know that he loved Ireland. I think he would have preferred to be home. I think he might have moved to the Caymans if we'd let him. This last trip was really just like probably the vacation we all needed because it was the first vacation after we'd had a hard vacation. So my husband was really stressed out. But it was just like he just seemed so relaxed. And it was interesting. He'd had a lot of behaviors at school and had like, some like over sensitivities. And then we went on vacation and then we had a meeting with the school and they were saying he was super relaxed and regulated and just very calm. And I was like, so they were joking that maybe all he ever needed was a Caribbean vacation. Um, so I do think as much as he likes being home, if you find him the right environment, he enjoys what vacation is. I know he enjoys his dad works in the city 3 days a week. So I think he really also he gets the concept of when we're on vacation that mom and dad don't have to go to work and that dad's around all the time. And I think he absolutely adores that. And that those kind of breaks are really important to him.
Is the transition back tricky?
It is. That's why we always try to build in. So like you'd asked about how long we do the vacation. Sometimes even if we have a week, we'll build in a day or two to kind of get him readjusted and re-regulated. And we'll do things like the first day back is like kind of the half day with mom and dad, then a half day maybe with like the babysitter so that he knows he's getting back into the routine and then kind of re-engage with school. When we talk about going just back to school, we often talk about like who he'll see so that he will look at it as something fun and not like, oh, you have to go back to school. Because like, I mean, I don't really enjoy it if somebody said like, oh, you're going to go back to work. So I try and like talk about who he's going to see.
How long did it take you to figure out what works?
I think we're still figuring out what works. And, as my husband says, the path is never linear. You take
No.
steps back, you take 2 steps forward, you go to the side. And then every time we've traveled with Liam, something's a little different. Like I mentioned to you, you'd asked earlier about the monkey backpack, and I was like, well, we did used to have
Agreed.
like those, and he's big. Like he's much taller and stronger than he was when he was 3. Um, so I think things are forever changing, but we learn to make accommodations and we learn to make the best of it.
On the beach trip to Grand Cayman, Liam was a superstar. What made that trip so successful in terms of preparation and execution?
Um, I think my husband and I were pretty prepared for that trip. We looked up exactly what we wanted to do. We'd been there before. We knew what we wanted. I think, as I just mentioned, Liam had kind of been on um, a tough bath, and he really likes having mom and dad around. So, like, once he kind of realized that this was a true break with mom and dad, and he got to do stuff like go swim all day and nobody was going to pull him out of the water. Nobody was going to put any demands on him. We also tried to be really demand free on that trip. We, as much as we want him to keep learning and we try and incorporate stuff that he's doing at school, at home, like we really, at one point we're working on him wearing goggles, and I think it's a really important thing for him to learn. But we'd started to like put the goggles on him and like 10 seconds on and 10 seconds off. And then I was like, you know what? This is your vacation. This is not the time for you to have to like be doing the things you do in therapies.
Yeah.
Like this is a true, so we really took a true break. Um we didn't make him do anything that he didn't want to do. So I think that also really helped in terms of like giving him, because I was like, it's only 3 days. It's not like he's going to forget everything that he learned. Um, and there's stuff you need to do in casual conversation. Like we kept up some of the signing and we used some of the devices and that kind of stuff to kind of make sure that we could all communicate with one another. But it wasn't like anything was withheld or that we were doing any sort of like work with him while we were on travel. So I think that also kind of really gave him the time to rejuvenate, because I realized more and more that he's got a lot of demands on him for a very little kid, and that can be heavy. Um, and we don't know how much pressure it puts on him, or what he thinks of those things. I think about myself. I'm very much an introvert, um, and doing things like going into public speaking engagements and those kinds of things can be very mentally draining. And I don't know, like, if maybe those are the same things that he sees therapy as, like, as much as he maybe enjoys it or knows the outcome is good, that it can sometimes be a mental drain. And I think one thing vacations are supposed to do is help you rejuvenate so that when you do go back to the things that you need to do, or that you want to do, but are taxing on yourself, um, that you have the capacity for them. And that's how vacations can help.
Can you share more about your experience in Galway and Westport, Ireland, and what went wrong with the trip? What would you do differently next time?
Um, I think if we went back, we would probably definitely do an Airbnb. Like I said, I love Ireland. My husband's family's from there, but I think that it's a very rainy city. So there's sometimes, like we had set a whole day that we were going to go, and we were going to go to a botanical garden, and we were going to walk, and he was going to be able to hike, and we were going to do all this stuff. We got there and it was pouring. I mean, just absolutely a downpour. So nobody wanted to do the hike, that was with us, and Liam kind of was like, and it was too muddy to take him out. Um, so I think that it would have been nice if we'd had more space to let him run around in like a place instead of having a hotel there. But you live and learn.
Does Liam need a visual schedule?
At home we use one. I don't think on vacation we ever did one. I think once he kind of knew, it's interesting. Our days on the last trip were pretty much the same. Breakfast in the morning, beach or pool, and like, so sometimes we would hold, let him choose between the beach and the pool. But fortunately, like the pool was right outside, so he could point to it, or he would show us. They had a picture of the beach in the hotel, and he'd be like, "I want to go there." So I don't know that he always needs a visual scout. Like I said, he's a pretty adaptable kid. So he's, interestingly enough, I think once he kind of knows the routine, he's very good about getting to go places.
What are your biggest tips for other families traveling with neurodivergent children? What worked well and what didn't?
Um, number one, use TSA Cares. I would say, it was funny. I was talking to a friend of ours whose son also has a hidden disability, and he had said like, oh, he's tried to go through his whole life without like making anybody feel like he's a burden and that he needs anything especially helpful. And I was like, it's for, and that's not how people look at it. They really look at it as they're doing an important service for a community that needs it. We've never felt by, especially this last time when we traveled, the TSA agent never made us feel like Liam was any sort of any different than anybody else that was coming through the airport. In fact, I think she made him feel even more special because she made sure to ask questions about what his needs were and, was he afraid of dogs and did loud sounds bother him? And I think that those programs are there for an important reason, and you should utilize them. Um, it's so worth it. Um, I would iPads. Sometimes though, if you, we've had times where we've thought something was charging and it's not charging. So I would say that's make sure that everything works.
We never bring my power wheelchair on the plane. With your upcoming
Good
trip
tip.
to LA, Santa Barbara, and Fresno, are there any new strategies or plans you're implementing to ensure Liam's comfort and enjoyment this time around?
Yeah, it's a longer flight. So we'll plan for more snacks, toys, bring probably 2 sets of headphones. And then I would also say make sure we have all the iPad chargers. Probably this time I would say we'll make sure that we also have like the portable chargers so that we don't ever lose power, or that if the power is draining, we'll probably look in to make sure that there's Wi-Fi on the plane beforehand. That's something my husband always looks into. Like he's a United member, so he tries to always make sure that, what he can get through his United app, and can he make sure that he has Wi-Fi. And then I would say like checking out, making sure that we have seats where maybe if he needs to get up and walk around the plane, that we can do that.
For your domestic trip to LA, how do you plan to manage the different travel dynamics compared to international trips? For your domestic trip to LA,
And this trip actually might be easier because we can use TSA Cares both ways. TSA Cares can only be used domestically. So once you get out of the US, they can't accommodate you anymore because they're not responsible for those airports. So it'll be interesting. We can actually schedule TSA in Newark, and then we can schedule it in LAX, which will be great because both of those airports are really busy. And then I think probably the other thing is we also booked, because we know that traveling east is always harder. So we booked a couple of days when we come back just to make sure Liam can get readjusted to the time zones, because he'll be losing times when he comes back towards New York.
what is one thing you would tell families traveling with a neurodivergent child about preparing for a successful trip, based on everything you've learned so far?
Um, I would say when you asked me this, the first thing I thought of is don't let any fears or society hold you back from traveling. And in many other countries, they're actually a lot more accepting of kids, and neurodivergent kids. We've had amazing times in foreign countries, particularly in Paris. I actually, Parisians were a lot nicer to us traveling with kids than when we traveled by ourselves. Then you're just too. And we had an amazing time. We were run a restaurant with Liam, and he had a meltdown. And then he left, and my husband and I ordered dinner. I was completely mortified. And the man at the next table leaned over and asked if everything was okay, told me not to worry. Liam came back. The owner was very delightful to him. So I would say, like, one of the things I learned was that kids are kind of kids, and you can learn to accommodate them, and you should. And probably people need to learn to be more respectful and patient of not only disabilities, but just kids in general, and kids deserve to take up space.
Thank you, Karin, for doing this with me. It was great to have you on.
My
Please
pleasure.
share this talk show with your family and friends. Everyone watching, don't forget to like, follow, Subscribe and share on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.